Let me check. If y'all, wrong thing. Where's that? Are we? We are on. Well, hello. Actually, we're gonna switch this first, and I'll talk. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Today we have the kickoff event for our very first course with the Joy Gym. I'm so excited. It is called the Joy Gym. Well, the full name is the Joy Gym Part One: Emotional First Aid. You may hear me talk about it, just shorthand for emotional first aid, but it's really a course centered around helping you develop the tools that you need to deal with difficult emotions like stress, trauma, fear, anxiety, and anger in the moment so that they don't become more damaging in the long run. It's very similar to what happens if you get a cut. When you get a cut, you will disinfect it. You will put neosporin on it. You'll put a band-aid on it. Or if you get a sprained ankle, you'll wrap it with that gauze tape. All these different tools that we innately know how to deal with our physical wounds, so that they don't get worse. If you get a cut and you don't disinfect it, you don't put a band-aid on it, it can get infected, which can be way worse. If you don't do anything, you can lose that hand. Or you have a sprain and you don't wrap it up, it can get worse. Like putting more weight on it could even hurt more, and eventually that can lead to worse and worse issues with whatever got sprained. And we tend to know this really well physically. Like it tends to be something that's really natural for us. But as humans, sometimes we struggle with this element when it comes to things that we can't really uh, fully or easily interact with the senses. Like we can't really see emotions. You can see the effects of emotions, but like can't really taste them. So that's where we are. We're taking, and it actually aligns with the Joy Gym perfectly, because with the Joy Gym, we talk about exercises that cultivate joy. Um, and we take the same concepts that we know with physical exercises, as in like strengthening muscles by doing repetitive exercises over time, and we apply that to mental exercises. So instead of like doing push-ups or going, I haven't been in the gym in a while, instead of doing push-ups or going to like the bench press, we would do a meditation or a breathing exercise instead of going to like on a stairmaster or on a treadmill. We would go to a yoga or a qigong class, right? Like we are taking those same concepts we know to strengthen our physical muscles and applying those same concepts to strengthen our mental muscles. It's that same concept here, just for dealing and treating with pain. When we deal with physical pain, we treat it in the moment so it doesn't get worse. We're going to learn through this course to deal with emotional pain in that same way. And it took a second, but I finally figured out how to share my screen on these lives, which I believe you can see a bit of it right now. I'm going to move on to our trusty PowerPoint, and we are going to begin. Cool. I am under the assumption that you all can see my screen. If you can't, please let me know. But like I mentioned, this is the Joy Gym Part 1, Emotional First Aid. My name is Jamal Washington. I'm an emotional and spiritual development coach. I am also the CEO of the Joy Gym. So, this is, I when people are like, oh, this is my baby, in terms of like their project or like, their passion, I kind of personally shy away from that, but I truly do feel like that's the case here, because it all like built this thing from scratch, and I'm incredibly proud of it, and really happy and excited to be sharing it with you all today. When it comes to the Joy Gym, we also offer courses, community, and coaching to help you become your best inner self. We'll talk about what that looks like um, more during this presentation, but know that there are many different ways for you to interact with the Joy Gym. And the course, while we're launching it, that's the kickoff event, it's just one of those ways. So let's do an overview of today's presentation. Yes, it says course overview, but today we're doing an overview of the presentation, right? We just did the introduction. We're actually about to move into a guided practice. You'll get a chance to practice some of the exercises that we have here on in the course. I'll talk through my story, kind of like what brought about the Joy Gym, what brought about emotional first aid. Um, we'll talk a bit about how the course was designed. We'll go into like, okay, what are the actual modules? What will you actually be learning in the course? I'll answer any questions we have through the comments. We'll do a closing practice, and then we'll go into conclusion and next steps. Ah, it's really happening. So, we will start with an exercise. It's a guided breathing exercise. It's personally one of my favorites. It's probably the one that I use the most often, just given that it can be really, really effective and flexible. Uh, it's called box breathing because you can think of it like a box, right? Where there's 4 steps, just like a box, and each step is for the same amount of time, just like a box. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to breathe in through our nose for 4 seconds. We're going to pause, just stay on the top of the in breath. We're not going to breathe in, we're not going to breathe out. We're just going to pause for 4 seconds. We're going to breathe out through our mouth for 4 seconds. And we're going to pause at the bottom of the exhale for 4 seconds. You'll hear me say in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold. And this will look like in, nose. So I'm breathing in through my nose. Hold. I'm not breathing in or breathing out, just holding the in breath. Out, mouth. I'm breathing out through my mouth. And hold. Just pausing at the end of the out breath once the air is out of my lungs. And we'll do this for about 1 or 2 minutes, nothing too long. In fact, I'll even set a timer. 1 second. And boom. Okay. So, to begin, I'd like to invite you to find a comfortable position. You can be seated, standing, or lying down. Whatever position you find to be most comfortable. I'd like to invite you to keep your spine in whatever position that you find. I'd like to invite you to keep your spine erect, but not tight or rigid. You may close your eyes or lower your gaze if it is safe to do so, and if you feel safe doing so. As a reminder, the cues will be breathe in, in nose, breathe in through your nose. Hold your breath. Out mouth, breathe out through your mouth. Hold your breath. When you are ready, or if you find yourself struggling, that it's hard to keep the cadence the entire time, try to take in more air during the in breath. Also, if you find yourself lightheaded at any moment, feel free to stop this practice. For those who are ready, I'd like to invite you to breathe the air out of your lungs. And breathe in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold. Halfway, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold, in, nose, hold, out, mouth, hold. And last time, In nose, hold, out mouth, hold. When you are ready, you may return to your natural breathing. When you are ready, you may slowly flutter your eyes open and look around the room to better ground yourself in the space that you are in. Congratulations! You have officially done your first exercise. I hope that was a great experience for you. I know it took me a little bit of time to kind of get adjusted and used to box breathing, but once I did, it was a game changer. It has been really, really effective in helping me to stay calm, stay grounded, stay centered, and perform at my best or most clear, even when I'm really tired, very emotionally charged, or just going through it. I've found that to be a very effective one. And I hope you had a similar, if not beneficial, experience. Now, we've gone through our first exercise. Um, we spent some time centering and grounding ourselves. Let's actually jump in to my story. Let's kind of figure out why the Joy Gym is here. Why is this course even created? Oof, this one's a doozy. um, so I grew up, and uh, just as a to set context for everyone, the way I'll be doing this story is through something called a way seeking mind, which is a meditation where you tell your story, but you try to stay grounded and centered and mindful throughout the entire time. Because often, as you've seen, sometimes when people talk, they talk on autopilot. It's like their head and their mouth aren't really connected. It's like their mouth is just saying things and their head is kind of somewhere else. So to kind of prevent that and help stay grounded and present, it'll be like I said, through wake seeking mind, which is more of a meditation. So and you'll have to excuse me. I don't share my story to strangers often. It's funny enough, we'll actually be doing another event on Wednesday all around sharing my story. Um, was on my public podcast. So this will be a shorter, more condensed version, but just know that it's definitely something we're working through. So um, like I said, my name is Jamal Washington, and I'm the CEO of the Joy Gym. The Joy Gym is around 9 months old, and we teach exercises that cultivate joy. I'm not, um, I don't have some psychology degree or I don't have a doctorate in PhD. However, I know this stuff deeply because the Joy Gym is simply a business that is centered around bringing about the transformation that I went through in my life. Um, I am not fully diagnosed, although I have received years of treatment for it. So that probably takes it there. Um, but I most likely have and have been treated for treatment resistant PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, and or complex trauma. I think we've heard about the term PTSD before, or well, I can't make that assumption. Post traumatic stress disorder is a stress disorder, as it says in the name, that comes when our body elicits a response. Like, let's say you're hungry, so your belly starts, or so your stomach starts grumbling, right? You needed food, your body elicited a response to let you know that, right? That same the way that our body will react to like our environment happens to help protect us from danger as well. This is how we get into something called fight or flight mode, like when we something stressful happens and our body prepares us to fight that thing or to run from that thing. With PTSD, that fight or flight mode never fully turns off, right? So when we talk about treatment resistant PTSD, what we're really saying is that someone who has been struggling to turn off their fight or flight mode turn off their "we're in crisis mode, let's move." Um, they struggle to have it turn off and stay off and work back in its like normal capacity, and what someone who does not have these issues would go through, like just having a stressful event, this fight or flight system turning on and then turning off when the stressful event is over. With post with treatment resistant PTSD, that response doesn't turn off. You stay in that presence. It's like staying in low to mid grade panic or low, mid, or high grade panic 24/7. And it can show up in different ways. And so what we mean when we say treatment resistant PTSD is that it defies treatment. So I have been going to therapy and doing all these other things for years, trying to find ways to feel better. And complex trauma is a mix of like big traumatic events, kind of like what you see with shell shock veterans, and little traumatic events. Like mm, it's hard to define little traumatic events because it's different for everyone. Um, Imagine if you were lightly tapped on your shoulder, right? But you were tapped in the shoulder, the same spot over and over and over and over and over again, right? The individual tap may not do much, but because it's hitting that same spot over and over and over again, after time, that spot gets sore. And if someone were to bump you on the shoulder, you'd be mad because that would hurt. And that's kind of how like small traumatic events happen, where often it comes from childhood and it grows up with things that seem benign, that seem fine, that seem to not have any effect, but over time, the accumulation of those effects can be just as bad, if not worse, than what we see from some of these shell shocked veterans. Not comparing what I've gone through to the trauma that a shell shocked veteran would go in, but I'm saying how, like, we have that example of big T's. You can have someone elicit a similar response to someone who has those big traumatic events with these small but consistent, like, emotional pains that come over and over and over again over the course of years, right? Um, I My story sometimes is hard for me to talk through and share because it is something that I grew up with a lot of privilege, which being a young black man sometimes is an interesting place to grow up in because by the looking around like the area I grew up, the house I grew up in, the family that I had, it's very hard to see, if that makes sense, in terms of like little T's. Because remember, complex trauma typically comes from childhood and builds up, and can be a mix of just childhood experiences or childhood experiences and big traumatic events. I got hit by a car, along with some of these things I'm talking about now. We'll get to the car soon. So I, it was really difficult to explain and articulate because they're I've had these symptoms for most of my life, but I could not point to it, right? Like a symptom of trauma is like tensing up, right? And they literally called me the robot growing up because I was always tense, because I was always face scared, always in that state of fight or flight. Didn't know that was just baseline. But and again, I didn't, no matter what books I read, no matter what I did, no matter who I talked to, I couldn't point to it. I didn't have the words. I could not for the life of me understand. But I always wanted to feel better. And I always thought that I deserved to feel better. So I spent a good portion of my life devoting myself to things that made me feel better and made me understand my pain. So whether that was poetry or sports, or even journaling or video games or anime, there were all these tools that I was just desperately trying to use to feel better. And a lot of that was a lot of reading and research. Maybe not when I was a kid, but as I got older, I ended up going to Howard University, and that was a complete culture shock. I remember, for those who aren't aware, Howard University is a historically black college, although it's known as a HBCU. And it's actually where our vice president, or the American vice president, Kamala Harris went. And I completely, I was so, I was so out of my element. I literally tried to teach myself how to beatbox and rap because I thought that would make me cool amongst people. And that was where some of like the complex trauma really started to show up, right? Ended up going to I ended up joining like three, technically two different fraternities, and then a step team of my dorm that was really serious. And after 2 years at Howard, I was so burnt out that I couldn't concentrate for more than an hour without getting a headache. Oh my gosh, there was a time where like I said, I was on my dorm step team. And I was good. I was in every step except for one in the show. And yet I remember when I was in this period of burnout, I went back to the basement where we used to practice. I took one step and fell to the floor. Like it literally had been less than a year since I was able to do like every step of my show back to back to back, like it was nothing. But like having that burnout hit me so hard that I couldn't take a step, and then not even being able to concentrate was a huge, huge wake up call. So I decided to make a change. Um, I discovered meditation, and I ended up going to Spain for 4 months in order to in order to sleep. And that I spent probably in those 4 months I was there, I probably spent 2.5 months just in my bed sleeping because I was just so ridiculously tired. But that was one of the first times where I feel like I had some sort of a grip, some sort of control over what was going on, over how I was feeling. So then, fast forward, I graduate and I get a chance to work at a tech company in Seattle. Now, mind you, I like literally had spent the last 4 years at one place they call the Black Mecca. Like literally, I went to a place that they called the Black Mecca, to a place that didn't even have a black radio station, and I was the first person from Howard to join this tech company's rotational program, which is a great honor, and the first black person who got a job there, who didn't intern beforehand. So like it was a huge honor, but it was incredibly difficult. Just the level of like I guess loneliness, of loneliness that I felt while I was there. And again, like this, that's when the burnout started to happen again. That's when this stress that had been building my entire life without me even knowing started to manifest as physical symptoms. It started as a repetitive stress injury, which is basically an injury that comes from repeatedly doing certain tasks, right? And it started as a pain in my thumb around here. Then it spread to my wrist. Then it spread to my elbow. Then it spread to my shoulder. Then it spread to my neck. And there was nothing I could do. I went to every single therapist I could find. And when I say therapist, I mean like physical therapist. I went to every doctor, went to a surgeon, went to orthopedic surgeon, I believe it was, occupational therapist. I went to nurse. Like I went to literally anyone that could see me to try and help. And around this time, I also had rediscovered meditation. I had actually done a 10-day silent meditation retreat right when I had graduated college. That was again kind of how I felt after I did the 2.5 months sleeping in Spain, where like it was the first time in my adult life I felt well rested. But outside of that, not that much of a change. And then so I'm struggling with all these things. I rediscover meditation again because the 5 years I was working at this tech company, I spent a whole year on medical leave in different chunks. And one of those times I was able to go back on this 10-day silent meditation retreat. And that's the time that changed my life because I had ended up um, realizing that connection was one of the biggest things that I was missing, that one of the things that I cared the most about in my life, right? And everything, all my greatest happinesses and my greatest happinesses is probably not correct. All of my greatest joys and my biggest pain came from either having connection or desperately wanting connection with someone and not getting it. And like it just completely fundamentally shifted my view on how to go about healing. Because I had tried all these different Western modalities of healing and it wasn't really working. And then it got to the point where 30 minutes of meditation would help me in this repetitive stress injury more than an hour of doing whatever exercise any of the physical therapists got me. I also, during this time, had a chance to work in Mexico for to execute one of the marketing strategies for one of our products. And during that time, I got hit by a car. I was like, very interesting experience. And for time's sake, I'll talk more about getting hit by the car on Wednesday when we do this in a live stream. or go over my story in the live stream. But that's really when the symptoms picked up again. So I was still working on this 4-year injury, or injury that was lasted for 4 years, and then got hit by the car, and then the trauma symptoms really started. And that's like kind of when I was at my lowest. It got to the point where I could barely get up out my bed. Got to the point where the act of getting up from my bed and walking to my desk would bring so much anxiety I could not stop. Like I've never experienced debilitating anxiety to that degree before in my life, to where like literally I could not function. Um, and then when I tried to push through, it would get worse. And then I remember there was one time, like multiple times, where the act of getting up and walking to my desk would bring tears to my face. The act of answering like every 2 or 3 emails would literally bring me to tears. I remember I talked to my friend, and he was like, "Bro, any job where you have to cry to answer 3 emails is not the job you should be taking," which is so obvious now. But in that moment, I did not have the capacity to truly understand what was going on. And remember, my entire life, I had been searching for ways to feel better. And that was like the turning point, right? Like that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. I went a couple more meditation retreats. Two of one of someone that I really admire, like Watkins. He had held like a retreat in August and a retreat in for New Year's, and I ended up having to go on medical leave again because of the mental health issues I was having. But on that time, I was able to go on a month-long meditation retreat, and just do along with learning um, all these different ways to feel better, because meditation had been a big help for previous injuries. Eventually got to the point where it was clear that I was so much more happy and even healthier when I was either meditating or offering ways to help other people deal with pain. So that became the Joy Gym. It started off as simply doing guided meditations every 2 days, or sorry, every weekday for 2 years. And now it's become this. And, we talk about how the Joy Gym offers exercises that cultivate joy. And this course is the culmination of that. This course is a way for everyone to practice these exercises that cultivate joy in a way, excuse me, in a way that works best for you and your busy schedule. And that is how we got here. So, when it comes to the course, right? Um, what is the point of the course? If I had to boil it down to 2 sentences, this is what I would say. The course is designed to build a safe place from which we can observe, understand, and open up to our pain with curiosity, loving acceptance, and compassion. What does that mean? Let's break it down piece by piece. We're going to build a safe place from which to observe, understand, and well, actually, we can do that. We're going to build a safe place from which to observe, right? So often with our pain, we are, it's almost like we get hit twice. We get hurt twice. We get hurt once with the actual sensations, like if you stub your toe, and then we get hurt again by the way we react to those sensations. The screaming, the crying, the resisting, the acting like it doesn't hurt, the walking on it, the not treating it in the moment. Um, and so it's quite often for a lot of people, the reactions to our pain make it hurt more and make it last longer than if we developed better tools. And well, a big part of that is because we are in autopilot while we're in pain instead of just simply observing it, right? In a non attached and non judgmental way. That's what we mean when we say observe. Now, we're going to build a safe place from which to understand our pain, right? There are, when we observe our pain in a non attached and non judgmental way, it becomes, we can understand it with a deeper clarity, right? And as we have this deeper clarity, often it helps to alleviate the pain. It may not always, but it helps to alleviate our pain or improve our quality of life in spite of this pain, right? And that's what we mean when we say understand. It's like the insights that naturally come from observing in a non attached and non judgmental way. So then we build a safe place from which to observe, understand, and open up to our pain. Ultimately, what we're doing when we're observing and understanding our pain is we're learning how to lower our resistance. One of my favorite quotes of all time. When you resist, and it comes from Chris Germer and Kristen Neff from Mindful Self Compassion. When you resist emotions, they go to the basement and lift weights. Oof, love that quote. Love that quote so much because it's true. We think often we react to emotions or pain in general by resisting it. But especially with emotions, when we resist those emotions, they grow. Because emotions is simply information. It's your body sending you signals to let you know that something's up. Just like how if your stomach is rumbling because you're hungry and you ignore that signal, it's going to rumble more. You're going to get hungrier. You're going to feel that hunger more. And it's going to build and build and build until you take action. Because that stomach rumbling is simply your body letting you know that it needs nourishment, right? These emotions, and as soon as you give your body what it needs, nourishment, those symptoms go away. It's very similar here. When emotions arise, it's simply our body letting us know that something is up. But when we resist it, just like when we ignore getting food when we're hungry, they often get worse. They get more intense and it stays longer. Just like your stomach may rumble, your stomach may hurt when you're hungry. It may hurt more, it may rumble more if you don't treat it in the moment. So that's why we're going to build a safe place from which to observe, understand, and open up to our pain. We are simply changing our relationship to our emotional pain and by observing, understanding, and opening up to it. However, there is a very specific way we need to do this, right? Or we can do this that can be the most effective. And that's why we say with curiosity, loving acceptance, and compassion, right? For example, if I get cut and I'm like, oh, or let's not say that. If I make a mistake at work, um, and I feel embarrassed and angry and frustrated, if I'm on autopilot, that can bring about a whole slew of different emotions. So, example, and when I say autopilot, I mean not being aware of what's going on, just kind of acting mindlessly, right? Without any awareness or intention or attention. So, if I'm on autopilot, if I am not aware of what's fully going on and I make a mistake at work, I could attack myself. Oh, you idiot. Why would you make that mistake? No one else would make that mistake. Fear could come in through my thought process. Oh my gosh, now this other person's going to take the promotion and I'm not going to be able to do what I wanted to do. Now, the anger, how could this happen? Like, how could I do that? And these are all examples in thoughts, but it could also show up, and maybe fear shows up as avoidance. Maybe you don't speak up at the next meeting because you're afraid of being embarrassed and making a mistake again. Maybe you don't advocate for yourself anymore because it attacks your sense of self-esteem, and you feel less prideful or less confident about yourself, right? All these different ways in which we are reacting mindlessly to this initial feeling of embarrassment, of anger, of frustration that is actually helping us to feel worse. Versus if we be like, okay, this happened, this mistake happened, what's coming up? I'm feeling anger, feeling discomfort, feeling frustration. It shows up as tightness in my body, right around here, a bit of tingling, maybe around here. The stories that I'm telling myself is that I'm inadequate because I made a mistake. I'm not going to get promoted because I made a mistake. What we did in this situation is we observed that we were feeling something. We understood what we were feeling. We opened up to it by placing our awareness on it with curiosity. We were curious to see what would come up. Loving acceptance. We accepted whatever came up, and compassion, which I would define as the motivation to alleviate suffering. So this going from this course really helps to transform us from frazzled to calm, from empowered, or from not, we don't start off empowered, or we may, um, from lost to empowered, from confused to hopeful. With Because what we're doing is we're learning how to better navigate difficult emotions. The one thing you'll learn about me is that I love quotes. Life is only difficult to the extent in which we have problems navigating difficult emotions. I'm gonna hit y'all with that one more time. It's just such a great quote. Life is only difficult to the extent in which we have problems navigating difficult emotions. Beauty of this course, the beauty of what we're learning here is that as we learn to better deal with difficult emotions, we learn to have a much more fulfilling and satisfying life. Because again, life is only difficult to the extent at which we have issues dealing with these emotions. So, by learning to building this safe place from which we can observe, understand, and open up to our pain, and doing that with curiosity, loving acceptance, and compassion, we are severely improving our quality of life, regardless of what happens outside. Because, like I just mentioned in that quote, it's not what happens outside that brings about more consistent happiness. It is your reactions to what happens. It's the problems dealing with difficult emotions that make life difficult, not the actual things that happen, right? That's the power of the course. That's what I'm trying to teach y'all. That's the transformation I went through, constantly being in pain, constantly dealing with trauma, being so burnt out I couldn't get up. And then learning these tools so that at first, those symptoms didn't change. At first, I felt the same way, but the quality of life got higher and higher and higher because even though I was going through those very same things, my relationship to the pain changed. The way that I navigated difficult emotions changed. And that gave me the ability to severely enjoy my life exponentially more, even though I was going through the same things. And as a result of enjoying my life exponentially more, these symptoms changed over time. I am in no way promising that you will be healed by the end of this course. But I have found in my life that severe transformation can happen if we change our relationship to how we deal with our emotions. And I'm offering everything I learned in the most effective and efficient way possible here in this course. That's what makes me so excited. That's what makes me, oof, gosh, so excited. So we talked about the first part. We're going to build a safe place from which to observe, understand, and open up to our pain with curiosity, loving acceptance, and compassion. That's the part one. Or when I say part one, like it's the first thing, not even the first, what's the best way to word it? That is one of the things we're doing. Another thing we're doing is we're learning to apply emotional first aid to our wounds, and we're learning when it's best to seek a professional, right? Again, if you get a tiny cut, you know, well, one, there's a lot of different tools in a first aid kit, right? If you get cut, you don't want to get gauze. Well, you may want to get gauze wrap. What's a good example? If you get a sprain, why would you put a band-aid on a sprain? Right? Like there are certain tools that work best for certain pains, right? And when it comes to emotional first aid, we're learning what tools work best for what pain. As a reminder, emotional first aid is what we do when we um, treat difficult emotions when they occur so they don't become more damaging in the long run, just like with practical first aid. So we're learning to treat our emotions difficult emotions when they happen so they don't become more painful in the long run. And we're learning when we have the capacity to treat something and when it's best to seek a professional. Because again, if your ankle is sprained, then yeah, you can realize that. You can get the gauze wrap, you can wrap your ankle and still move on and be fine. And it'll heal perfectly fine. If your ankle is broken, go see a doctor immediately, right? It's the same with our mind. If we're dealing with certain pain that we can manage, that we have the capacity to navigate, especially with these better tools, then let's do that. We have the tools to do that. But if it's coming to the point where we need to seek a professional as the only way we're really going to find greater satisfaction, then let's do that as well. So there are 5 steps to emotional first aid. And I see we have around 17 minutes left here, and I do want to have room for questions. So I'll move a little bit quicker. Nurture inner balance. Nurture inner balance is pretty much how we go about building. Remember earlier we said we were going to build a safe place from which to observe, understand, and open up to. Nurture inner balance is that safe place. Cultivate positive emotions. What we do here is that we are this is hard work. Difficult emotions may come up often as we're doing this, right? So, with cultivating positive emotions, it helps us build that safe place because not only can we stay centered and grounded in difficult emotions, we can rewire our brain to feel more positive emotions more intensely, more often, and more naturally. So, we're kind of like, we're building a foundation, we're building stability, we're building the opposite of difficult emotions. So we have many different places we can go to. And then once we have those tools, once we can cultivate, once we know how to cultivate positive emotions on a whim, once we know how to have that inner balance, can stay centered and balanced, even with difficult emotions arising, then we start to navigate difficult emotions. Then we learn, then going back, like now we start to open up to our pain. We do that with curiosity, loving acceptance, and compassion. All of these things are elements of cultivating positive emotions as well. So again, it all kind of comes around. We learn the basic tools, and then we learn the basic tools, and then we can begin to actually go to the meat, the crux of the course. Then we learn how to grow spiritually. This, funny enough, is something that I struggled with for a while in terms of whether I was going to add it in the course or not. Please know that when I talk about spirituality, I'm not necessarily talking about religion, right? The Joy Gym, we define spirituality as something that you connect with and believe in that's greater than yourself. So, for example, sports, as far as the Joy Gym is concerned, sports is one of the most, especially like the Super Bowl, the World Cup. The World Cup is one, in my opinion, one of the most spiritual events that we humans go through because all our humans, we believe, like all our humans, we believe in the World Cup. That's why we send our teams. That's why we root for the teams there. And we're connecting to something bigger than ourselves, a global soccer term or football, depending on where you are, tournament, right? And that is spirituality. It's connection. Now, mind you, some of you may become very anxious or uncomfortable if I mention the word God. Some of you wanted me to mention God from the very beginning. I am trying to I'm trying to work with everyone because again, we all deal with difficult emotions. We all can benefit from learning better ways to navigate them. And regardless of your belief system in terms of religion, maybe even like the other aspect of being an atheist, we everyone is accepted, everyone is welcome, because again, as far as the Joy Gym is concerned, spirituality is around connection, and that can include a connection to a higher power, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So, and all of us, regardless of our belief system, can develop skills that help us connect, because talk about the Joy Gym, cultivating exercises that cultivate joy. We are at our most joyous when we're our most connected because we're social beings. We are literally hardwired to connect. So by learning how to be more open and receptive to connection, regardless, not necessarily regardless of what you're connecting to, but in general, doing that and then connecting to things that nourish you and that are healthy for you, both short term and long term, that is one of the best ways to maximize your feelings of joy and the frequency in which you feel them. So that's why we have the grow spiritually there. And lastly, we have build consistency. The big thing about the Joy Gym is that we want to support you in your lifestyle change because with the Joy Gym, we are trying to help you develop consistent daily habits that lead to a better, higher quality of life, that lead to cultivating joy. Just like how at the gym, you got to go consistently. You can't go to the gym once a month and expect to change, right? It's those who go the most consistently that get the best effects. It's the same here because remember, this is the Joy Gym. It's the gym about joy. So just like any other gym, we still need to build that consistent pattern, which is often equals a lifestyle change. The build consistency section will really focus on how the Joy Gym can support you and how you can support yourself in making this healthier, happier lifestyle change. Okay, Q&A time. I am going to stop sharing. And I would love to open up the floor. Do we have any questions? Yeah. And in the meantime, let's see, is there anything else we can mention? So I guess I will keep talking for a bit, see if we have any questions come up. I'll give it around 5 minutes. And then if we don't have any questions in 5 minutes, we'll move on to the next section. I guess I can talk a bit more about each section, right? So While we're waiting for questions, the first section we talked about nurture inner balance. With nurture inner balance, really, like I mentioned, we're trying to build a stable, centered, and grounded place in which we can start to do some of this work. Healing through our emotional wounds, treating our emotional wounds in the moment can be very difficult work because, like I mentioned earlier, we're changing our relationship to pain, and this is a different relationship than what we've had for the past, right? If you, talking about myself here, if I was someone who was an avoider, I avoided painful situations. That means I avoided conflict, I procrastinated, like what you name it, I did it to avoid feeling difficult emotions, right? But again, like I mentioned with the example about your stomach rumbling, if you cannot avoid hunger, not long term, your stomach's going to keep rumbling. The pain in your stomach's going to get worse. You're going to have less energy and all the other symptoms that come with malnutrition. But like, there is only so much that resisting that bodily sensation, that bodily experience will do. It was the same here, where I was constantly avoiding difficult emotions because I didn't have the tools to observe them. Right? I didn't have the tools to look at them from a grounded place. Nurture inner balance is really important because if we don't look at, if we can get, how do I explain it? It's almost like sometimes I like using the example of like, if you're at a movie theater and you're watching a movie and it's a scary movie and you were to get up and be like, the killer's right there, like pointing at a seat in front of you and then run out the movie theater, people are gonna look at you crazy because they know that they're watching, they're observing, like they know they're the observer in what's going on. Right. So if you suddenly like acted like you were in the movie and got up and ran away, they'd be like, well, what's their problem? Right. That's that relationship of witnessing, of being the observer of what's going on, while still staying in that place, while still staying centered and grounded, is really important, right? Because the minute that we get caught up in the emotion, we become that person in the example who's acting as if the scary movie is happening in real life, right? That's why we work on nurturing inner balance because being able to stay grounded and centered is one of the most important things we can do at the beginning. Because again, as these difficult emotions come up, we're trying to observe them, we're trying to understand them, we're trying to open up to them without being caught up by them. Then we have cultivate positive emotions. Fun fact, cultivate positive emotions was actually the premise behind the Joy Gym in the first place. There's like I learned, well, I had known about cultivate positive emotions for a while, but that term, I just knew them by a different name. But that term, cultivate positive emotions, actually came from my certification with UCLA in mindfulness. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is exactly what the Joy Gym is doing. It's all around cultivating positive emotions. So we had the course, and with the course, or with the cultivating positive emotions section, like studies have proven that doing these exercises consistently do bring about positive emotions. Um, this is because in the cultivating positive emotions section, we're learning how to rewire our brain to deal with difficulty, or deal with anything really, um, and default to a loving, accepting, and open response, or yeah, response to what happens, right? And that's why it's incredibly important. I found a lot of people actually really, really like the cultivating positive emotions section. And why wouldn't you, right? There's literally a meditation in there, like for gratitude, where the whole meditation, we just think about things that made us smile or that we're grateful for. Love gratitude meditations. But again, even like thinking about it, like it's brought about a smile on my face. It brought about positive emotions. Next, navigate difficult emotions. Again, like the first two prepare us for this because now that we we can observe what's going on without getting caught up in the emotion. And if things become a little bit overwhelming, which they may happen to some of us at different points in the course, at different frequencies, um, we can go back to positive emotions, right? But learning different ways to navigate these difficult emotions. One of a quote I really loved, I don't know me, I love my quotes. Like someone said that mindfulness is really around changing your relationship to how you experience life. And I love that thought process because it's true. Like oftentimes our relationship to pain is a fear, anger, avoidance, resistance, rejection, right? When it comes to we're changing our relationship to one of openness, loving acceptance, and I'm forgetting the last one. Compassion. There we go. And it's a radical shift, like especially like I'm 27. Like I spent 27 years of my life, or not anymore. I spent more over 20 years of my life like resisting and fighting my emotions. So to suddenly shift into a different way takes a lot, takes work, takes time, but it's very effective when done properly. And that's why we then have the navigating difficult emotions section. Once we've gone through all these steps, then we have the tools necessary to grow spiritually because all this is really around opening ourselves up so we can connect to things bigger than ourselves more. Yeah, I'll go more in that section later in the upcoming weeks. I see we don't have any questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present one more time and we are going to finish this out. Let's do it, team. Boom. Let's finish Q&A. So, next steps. If you are completely sold, you're like, yes, this is exactly what I need. This is dope. You can follow the link to register for emotional first aid and get your spot today. Now, the beauty of this is because we're in beta, this is the first time we're launching the course. I will be offering discounts. The first 5 people get it for the course. Full price of the course is $1,000. The first 5 people will get the course for $250. The next 5 will get it for $500. The next 5 will get it for $750. This is the public announcement telling everyone that we're doing it. So now's your chance to get it for the cheapest it'll ever be. And like I said, we only have 3 more spots for the 250 section because some people got a little excited, found out about it early. So make sure to use the QR code or any other. You can also check out the very first featured section of my profile in order to register for your spot today. And again, those spots are very limited, so get them while you get the chance. And then next, we also have a free mini course. Let's say you're not fully ready for the commitment and you want to go about trying out some of these things. Well, feel free to check out our free mini course. You get access to some of the modules and the elements of the full course. And it's a great way to try it out, learn a few of these exercises and benefits, and get a better idea for my teaching style, how the course will go, what you can expect. Yeah. Yes. We are going to end with a closing meditation practice. For those of you all who, we'll do that later. To begin, I'd like to invite you to find a comfortable position. You can be seated, standing, or lying down. Try to keep your spine straight but not tight or rigid if you can. You may close your eyes or lower your gaze if it is safe to do so, and if you feel safe doing so. For this meditation, we will be repeating a particular phrase. It is in the repetition of this phrase and the open acceptance of whatever happens. Maybe we feel better. Maybe we feel lighter. Maybe we feel worse. Maybe there's a pain that comes up as a result. This practice is in the repetition of the phrase and the open acceptance for whatever happens. And the phrase is as follows. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. Repeat the phrase either silently to yourself or quietly out loud. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. As we repeat this phrase, we may find resistance. This is complete resistance may show up as certain thoughts, emotions, or sensations. They may show up as a restlessness, a sleepiness, a desire to get up and run away from this meditation, a consistent questioning of its efficacy or the point of meditation. It's all fine. It's all normal. This is all part of what I'd like to invite you to generally accept. Whenever you find that your mind has wandered, I'd like to invite you to bring it back to the sensations you feel or bring it back to the repetition of the phrase. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. May I know my worth as well as I know my breath. When you are ready, you may let go of this practice. When you are ready, you may slowly flutter your eyes open and look around the room to better ground yourself in the space that you are in. And there we go. That is our event for the day. Of the course. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot to mention. The course opens to the public on April 15th. So right now we're taking pre-sales for the course. Um, the course is on demand, so you can do it at your own time. And it's also live cohort, so you can do it with your cohort, whatever works best for you. And to promote the course moving forward, I'll be going live every Monday and Wednesday. Monday, we'll talk about the actual elements of the course, the different modules. Today, we talked a bit about nurture inner balance. Next time, we'll go a lot deeper on cultivating positive emotions. And on Wednesday, we'll be doing a live recording of the podcast. My podcast, Milk Chocolate for the Soul. It's all around dope conversations and meditations that make your soul tingle. So I'll be sharing more in depth of my story in a section that we're calling "Why the Heck Did You Leave Your Six-Figure Job and Move In with Your Parents?" So I, like I said, we talked a bit about my story today, but there's definitely more elements to it. that I would love to share with you all moving forward. So again, thank you so much for this. Love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Can't wait to see you again. And may you find ease. Catch y'all on Wednesday. Bye.